the public use cabin that a fraternity house rented. Not quite, but yeah, it was homesteaded in 1959, as you saw, which for Europeans is not very long, but for Alaska, you know, that's like half the time we've been established. So I love just mainly to see how fast nature has taken over when you let it. You know, a lot of people say, okay, well, we've urbanized, you know, so fast. Like, how can we go back? You know, like, what? How do we do that? Why don't we just keep going forward? And this is proof to me that you can go back and let nature take back over, and that there are other solutions, you know? But more than that, so I've thought myself of making this story into a bit of my own Harlequin romance paperback that you can buy at your local grocery store. You have Red, who came up here in the 50s with the military, post-World War II, and his job, can anyone guess what his job might have been? He worked with airplanes, but his job was actually to chase moose off the runway, which I think is a pretty awesome job. And so he decided to stick around Alaska after that, because who wouldn't be hooked after such an occupation, right? So he got, you know, hooked on the land, became a commercial fisherman and a trapper in the winter. So he was always looking for new places to trap. He'd get ermine, muskrat, even some lynx, wolf, any of those nice furry creatures that my grandmother used to love before PETA really got on the fur lover's case. But yeah, so he would come up and he'd made friends with this guy, Don Sheldon. You might have heard of him. He was a really famous bush pilot. And Don Sheldon had been flying around and said, there's this really great lake on the way up to the mountain, and I think that would be a really awesome place for you to start your fur line. And he goes, yeah, sure, have at it. Sounds good, but I gotta find myself a lady, you know, before I spend my winters up in the bush all alone. Sure enough, this woman, Bunny, from Manhattan of all places, had just come up to Alaska to visit her cousin, Martin, who was one of Red's friends. He was another trapper. And sure enough, within a couple months, her and Red were madly in love. She threw her whole socialite scene out the window and moved out here with him, and they started building this cabin in 1959. Yes, pretty impressive. They had, you'll notice they have the metal corrugated roof, which had to be flown on the pontoons of the boat, as well as the wood stove. They would kind of huck the lumber he got all from these woods here. The windows they had to bring in. But everything else, Red came in with a handsaw and chinked these logs himself and made what was once a really beautiful home. And they were able to raise several kids and lived here for 5 years in the winters. So yeah, just take a look around. I really love to look at how much moss is growing on top of it. There's several different varieties in just a small section. Take a look through the windows. You can see the old bunk beds from the kids, and just think about that whole winter thing. What it was like to live here in the winter. When your water source is frozen, your job is to snowshoe 5 miles to find animals on your trap line, and you have to hunt a moose to feed your family, because the salmon aren't running in the winter anymore. So yeah, just take a look around, and you can go around this area and look in the windows, take some pictures. If everyone wants to walk a little closer so everyone can get a good look at those.
They are not out in Switzerland now, right now.
Not yet?
Yeah, they are coming, but not already with the flowers.
Oh yeah.
It takes maybe 2-3 weeks.
We'll get a little sneak preview here. So these have become one of my favorite flowers this summer. And once again, going back to the whole winter survival thing. So, you know, men in Alaska, they like to get tough, wear a beard, makes them feel more manly, you know. Lupin are pretty cool. They kind of do the same thing with their leaves. They have these soft leaves that kind of grow this little fur. So they're able to grow in places that are often exposed or on barren rock or after a glacier has just receded. And they're able to take that force of the wind without being knocked over or harmed, because the wind will kind of just glide over that little beard on its leaves, if you will, and it won't harm it. But that's not even the coolest thing about the lupin. The coolest thing is that you'll notice that at the tops they'll get the white flowers that are the different color. Does anyone have an idea why they might turn different colors? So the bees around here are really attracted to blue. And that's why most of our flowers, if we grow them, are blue, purple kind of color, because that is what the bees really hone in on up here. So the bees have to do an incredible amount of work to get in these flowers. They have to pry it open, learn how to, stick that little proboscis in there and pollinate it. And it takes a lot of work. So when the flowers run out of pollen and they're not available anymore, they'll actually turn white, so that the bees no longer expend the energy of going to the flowers that no longer have enough pollen in there. Isn't that neat? Nature is amazing. But yeah, you can see the little fuzz here. And, they're really important as well, because around here, if you can imagine, this is actually all grown on what used to be a big rocky outcrop. The lichen first came in and broke apart the rock and creating a little bit of soil, and then these plants like lupin that can live in soil that doesn't have a lot of nitrogen in it can come in and start to kind of lay the ground foundations. And once they're there, of course they're fixing nitrogen and other minerals and whatnot and making the land more fertile so that other plants can come in and start growing. So this is a plant that you'll often see on a new glacially receded rocky outcrop. And we have a snack. So before we turn around, I'll give you one last boost of energy. Have you seen this flower yet? It's the Alaskan calendar flower called the fireweed. And it'll grow. It's all on those scenic byway posters of the big magenta tall flower. It's really beautiful. It's kind of a bitter leaf. I liken it to arugula, something of that nature. Goes really great if you use those wild cucumber leaves and make a salad out of it. You're more than welcome to pass it around and try it. And Lily, would you like to start? And yeah, once the flowers bloom, you can eat those and you'll stop eating the leaves.
You can eat the flower? The flower?
Sorry, am I going too fast?
No, you're fine. You're so brave.
Mosey onto the front here. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Nach 11 Tagen sieht es aus schon.
I'm pretty sure we can